of the Borough Board of Commissioners for Monday, January 8, 2019. We'll start our meeting then with a moment of silence. Thank you. Jay Farrell, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
My pleasure. Would everyone rise, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have the agenda before us. Is there a motion to either amend or accept the general agenda as it stands?
I would like to add one item to old business and make it item number 2, and that is the town hall demolition contract.
Anything else? Is there a motion to accept the general agenda? So approved. Second. Moved by Pamela Baldwin, seconded by Bette Wilson Foley. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. As to the consent agenda.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to recuse myself from vote on the consent agenda.
Michael Fiocco is recused and will step. I was going to say you will step away, but that's fine. You don't need to do that. Are there changes or modifications to the consent agenda?
I would like to pull from the consent agenda the master encroachment agreement and move to new business.
That would be item number 4 to new business.
Also, correction, the minutes, page 8, this paragraph, second line, change left to greater.
All right.
I'd also like to, I'll say this for discussion for the motion.
All right, is there a motion on the consent agenda which would move item number 4 to new business and would make a change on page 8 of the minutes, paragraph 5, a change from less to greater? Is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jay Foley, Jay Farrell.
Is this legal?
Moved by Jay Farrell, seconded by Bette Wilson Foley. Now we'll have discussion.
Thank you. I would just like to request that in future, our friends at China Park Investors hold major changes to proposed additional elements until we've the entire board has formally weighed in with comments. That'd be a good idea. I've got some subsequent comments. I'm looking forward to seeing your additions, but I'm now working on 2 drafts, so it's a challenge. I appreciate you hearing that.
All right. With the comment and the amendments, is there a motion to accept the consent agenda as amended? We have the motion. We're ready to vote. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. That's the end of the consent agenda. We're ready for the evidentiary hearing with respect to Lowe's special use permit, Lowe's Drive, 190. And we have Victoria Bailiff to lead us in that discussion. Brian Griesbeck, are we ready to move to that?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. This is special use permit 2018-05. Matthew McClory is requesting a special use permit to operate a propane refueling station at 193 Lowe's Drive. The property is Zone C2, Highway Commercial. The proposed station will use a 500-gallon tank for refueling, which will be located towards the rear of the property, next to Suite 110, which is the space that the retail side of the operation will use. The recommendation is to hold the evidentiary hearing.
And with respect to that evidentiary hearing, there is no one signed up for speaking tonight on that particular matter. Is there anyone from the floor who failed to sign up that would like to give evidence in the special permit at 193 Lowe's Drive?
I believe that may have been me. I was here to answer questions if you guys had any.
This is the applicant, Matthew.
From the applicant, yeah, Matthew McClory.
Well, I appreciate you being here, Matthew. I think this is not the time that the board would be asking questions, but would be a public time for questions and comments. So
okay.
I think that we'll look forward to hearing from you when it comes back on the agenda.
Thank you.
Well, I think this is our public hearing, correct?
That's right.
Right, so I do have some questions.
Okay. From the applicant, to the applicant, or myself?
Whoever feels best able to answer questions. So I'm looking at the tank, and I don't know a lot of that operation and how it works. But it's in a landscaped area presently. Does an automobile pull up to this tank in order to get to process refueling?
So I'm Matthew McClory, an applicant, and typically a vehicle would simply park, and then the tank would either be carried or wheeled to the filling station.
So that's good. I was glad to hear that, because I was curious to see if we would be blocking the drive aisle while the filling was going on. So okay, so they'll just be parking and then getting there. So there is a concrete pad or path from the sidewalk to this filling station?
There is currently a sidewalk, I believe, around the side of the building. But as far as a path from the sidewalk to the filling station, we could put one in, but I didn't have it on the plans. Usually they're 20-pound propane tanks that are carried.
Right.
So I did not have plans for a pathway for carrying that to the filling.
So in inclement weather or after saturated rains, folks are going to be walking in the mud. You may want to consider that.
Okay.
And so I think this would be for Victoria. Is impervious surface an issue here, and or is there any landscape requirements?
No. Already met by what's existing. There's no impervious issues.
Okay.
I have one question, Matthew. Are you moving your business from the other location that you had applied for?
Yes, we didn't end up coming to an agreement on the renting circumstances for that other application. So yes, this would be the sole location.
And on this building, which would be your office?
It's actually that very corner building. The last one is
In front of the tank?
Yes, sir.
All right. And that has the same address as the restaurant and the paper shop all have 193 addresses?
That entire building, I believe, is 193, and there are suites within it.
That's all I have.
Anything else? Very good. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Victoria. now is the time for citizens matters, and there are several people signed up, but I would like to take this opportunity to welcome to Pittsboro Ted Mosler and Kevin Miller. If you gentlemen would like to come up for just a moment. These are the principals involved in a new business which will be occupying a building here in Pittsboro. Depending upon how long you've been in Pittsboro, you may know it as Kaiser Roth Hosiery Company or Violex Company, but it's the brick building there at the corner of Hanks and Credle Streets. And these gentlemen will be operating a medical device company, and I invited them here this evening to just tell us a little bit about their company and to welcome them to Pittsboro.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I know a lot of the faces in the room I've met once or twice and tried to introduce myself along the way, so I want to thank the town for the hospitality. Our company, E.G. Galero, is a company that I started, and Kevin has worked with me for the last several years as our head of finance. But the company designs and develops medical devices, and we've been doing that for the last 15 years based in Research Triangle Park. As we've expanded the business, we needed a site for manufacturing. So the old Violex building has good bones. It's been vacant, as I understand, for over 5 years. So we have a lot of work to do to bring it to where we need it to be for a medical device facility. But nonetheless, our business has expanded to include manufacturing. So our hope is to employ local folks and create some good opportunities in the community and really be, I guess, as good of a citizen and steward of the space and of the community as we're able to be. So the facility here will focus on the manufacturing of electromechanical systems. So if you've ever been in the hospital and you got hooked up to an IV pump, that would be something that we would or could produce there. A few other things that we do regularly is design single-use medical devices. So after the pump, you have IV sets, and then you get connected to that via a device that would use once per patient. So half of that business would be dedicated to products like that, and the other half would be dedicated to the contract manufacturing of electromechanical systems. Our customers, about half are in the area, so Research Triangle Park, pharmaceutical companies, medical device companies. And then the other half of our business is outside of the area, including places like Europe, the West Coast, East Coast. But we do definitely concentrate in the area, and as our business grows, from a design standpoint, our business will grow from a manufacturing. Anything else that you'd like to cover?
No, I don't think so. Take questions.
I think we'll end up hiring around 60 people over the next few years. And that really, I think, is a conservative number. I know Violex had over 100 people in the facility prior to exiting. So we do have the space for that, but conservatively, I think around 60 is something that we can achieve over the next several years.
Wonderful.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. And Town Hall, I guess will be adjacent to you.
Yes. So that's a good point. I know I've met with Michael and some other folks in town who've informed me of kind of your plans. And so our goal is to be a good neighbor. We have plans to improve the exterior of the building. It looks kind of a tired brick building, and our goal is to make it a little more vibrant and a little more medical device feeling as you come upon it. Right now there's a somewhat unsightly barbed wire fence up against the road, so we'll intend to, at minimum, push that back and add some landscaping to the Hank side of the street and really paint and improve the the whole exterior. That is a little bit secondary, certainly, to getting the inside up and running. We have a lot of equipment that's just sat idle, HVAC equipment, and electrical generators, and walls that need to come down. So we have a lot of work to do inside, but our goal is to, before the end of the year, move to the outside. And part of that is, I think you'll see an application for the facade grant. So, and we also just submitted to the North Carolina Department of Commerce an application for building reuse. So it's designed to improve rural communities or low population communities and take vacant buildings and bring them back to, say, to their glory days a little bit. So we intend to leverage some of those tools so that we can accelerate our plans in that space.
Wonderful. Well, we'll look forward to watching that come along, and of course we'll break you in really hard when it comes to the street fair in October.
Yes, so I helped a little bit the last time because it was right about the times that the keys were changing hands.
Yeah.
So we're happy to support that in the future as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
With respect to public expression speakers, we have 5 people signed up. Ron Hatley, if you'll come to the podium, please.
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, I'd like to thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. My name is Ron Hatley, and I live at 24 Roy Hatley Road. As I've said before, and I can only imagine the difficulties that you have as a board member, from allotting parking spaces to switching gears and overseeing the largest planned development in North Carolina, and yet maintain a home life. So I appreciate you. I was fortunate enough to attend the NAS meetings, Mr. NAS meetings. I think that was about 2 years ago when they began, somewhere in that neighborhood. And at that time, they discussed the many elements that are affecting the development in Chatham County. The elements are, to say the least, very complex. I made a presentation to that group in the interest of trees, and I do so again tonight for the board. The current draft on the Pittsboro website outlines what may occur during development. Durham is cited as an example for tree canopy requirements. The tables on the draft show residential, non-residential, and mixed use as requiring a tree coverage area of 10%. Is that exemplary? Raleigh is famous as the city of Oaks. The city of Charlotte is attempting to plan to have 50% canopy coverage by the year 2050. And that seems somewhat more exemplary. Chapel Hills UDO is currently 30% multifamily, 30% commercial, and 40% mixed use. Pittsburgh's canopy was 53% in the year 2015. Why are we now considering such low offerings? The villages in Chatham Park will be comparable to the urban tier under the Durham ordinance. My question to the board is, why is this? My experience on several boards in the past in the process of change is draft to draft is redlined. As mentioned by Commissioner Barnes, it's very difficult for the average citizen to follow the changes that's been made, especially when you're working from draft to a draft to a draft. So it's very difficult to follow. As an example, the summary of the November 7, 2017 draft on the Pittsboro website have no sections 1, section 6, or section 7 under the elements on pages 1 through 3. Under the tree coverage standards, I quote, site plans and subdivision plans property for which there is an approved site plan and property for which there is an approved residential subdivision plan for an average lot size of 10,000 square feet or less may be cleared and graded in whole or in part to accommodate construction for improvements of that property. Can these 10,000 square foot areas be combined such that the entire area is razzed of all grading? Do we just plant crepe myrtles and esplanades and then Chinese elm in front of each house and move on our way? I witnessed a friend recently who agonized over tree removal when he built his home. His wife posted a cartoon on social media of a logging truck carrying trees out of the area, and the logging tree was disguised as a hearse with a procession of woodland animals following that hearse as if it was a logging truck hearse. I'd like to leave you with the words of Chatham Park website. At Chatham Park, we believe design and nature should live in harmony. That's why we're building around our most significant resources, not over them. Is it the best master planned community yet to be developed? Please make it so. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you, Ron Howard. The next speaker is Ed Fowler. If you'd come to the podium, please.
Hi, my name is Ed Fowler. I'm a resident of Potterstone Village. I remember speaking about 6 months ago on the topic of an application that was floating around for what now has become a reality and was submitted about 10 days ago for Chatham concrete patch plant. I want to thank everybody for giving me this opportunity to speak, and if you don't mind, I just have a few handouts. Can I pass them out for reference? I didn't know there was a 3-minute rule. I apologize. You must know me. So since we are at what I think are the early stages, I could be wrong. I have a series of questions and things that came up last time. Just wanted you guys to be aware of. What would the timeline be for key decisions in this process? I'd look for guidance as to who we could speak to as these plans roll out. I think the biggest question on the table, last time the way I understood it was granting an easement to get access to sewer and water lines. And I want to know if something has changed since last time, because we were all under the impression that was the obstacle that kept the plant away from us the first time. They talked to our HOA board on that. Our intent is we're going to have an annual HOA meeting, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. They usually happen in January, but it's been postponed. And at that time, our intention is to gather more signatures. If you recall, last time we had over 172 signatures in opposition to this concrete plant in our backyard. If you look at page 1, I didn't scale this out. The gentleman I was hoping to be here that put it out, but you can see there's at least 10 houses immediately adjacent to where the plant is being built, as close as 312 feet away. I work every day next to a concrete plant with Builders First Source on 64. And in the article that I handed out there in the Houston neighborhood, you will see such comments about noise level, quality of life, people who won't let their children play outside when things are in full operation, having to wash your cars every day. I know that for a fact, that because of the dust and that, guys will not park their cars on that side of our lot. Aside from the particulates that many of our neighbors are concerned about, if you remember, Lisa Meeker spoke 6 months ago too, about some of the issues that we think are a danger to our health, as opposed to just nuisance issues in itself. I had a video about the noise level and that I could share with you, but I do want to just put people on notice, because it's so early, that there is going to be a high degree of opposition to this from the community. We're asking the mayor and others who are here to consider the fact that we are here first this time, because what we heard a lot last time was the chicken plant was there first, and we knew about it. We didn't know about zoning too. We checked after we had the last meeting and looked at when we purchased the home if there was notification about zoning up and down that side. I hope this company grows here, and maybe we have a nice parcel of land to sell you if you're interested in lieu of a concrete plant or Why not a chemical plant, or why not a nuclear power plant? Come in the backyard. You know, I don't know where it stops and where it ends. I don't know if anybody is here from the concrete plant today, but I'd like to open a dialogue there too, assuming if this goes through, and we're hoping it doesn't, so we'd like to talk about what can we do to get provisions to limit the hours of operation, to minimize the noise. A lot of times, as you're on highways, I know this is not a popular topic, and I shouldn't say it, but there are walls that are put up. They are a concrete company. You know, we had the same issue, Jim and I, when we dealt with the chicken plant. We went over and talked to the managers there because of the noise from the trucks, which were just refrigerated trucks. The noise from these trucks and that operation has got to be 10 times more. You know, I can just see calling the police, I don't know how many times, like they always did when I was over at certain items where the decibel level was, I can't imagine it being within those decibel limits as well. Rezoning, is that something the board can initiate? We have to initiate. That's another question. And I don't know if people can reply to these questions. I know I only have a couple of minutes, so I just wanted to make everybody aware that this is going to become probably the biggest issue in our village since I've lived there for about 11 years right now. That will affect quality of life and home values. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ed Fowler, I think one of the things, several of your questions could be answered by the planning department, and we'll try to begin to create that kind of dialogue, like the question about the easement, and then go from there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and speaking.
And it is true that we do have a 3-minute, technical 3-minute deadline on speaking. However, we've yet to boo anybody away from the podium. I think it's an extremely important thing for us to hear. Calvin Megison, you're next on the public expression speakers.
Hello, thank you all for letting me come and speak with y'all tonight. And I'd like to mirror the first gentleman's comments about our appreciation for y'all being here. I know firsthand what a toll these type of government positions can take on a family. I really extend my heartfelt gratitude to y'all for your service. I'm here tonight to speak about the proposed changes to the tree protection amendment for Chatham Park. And my comments are pretty straightforward. There is a document on the Pittsboro Town website for a recommendation to implement a tree protection ordinance for the town of Pittsboro. That's work that's already been done, and I just say that this ordinance, to me, the tree protection ordinance from the town of Pittsboro, with recommendations of tree coverage area of 40% for institutional, 30% for mixed family, and a scale for the canopy coverage of residential lots looks good, with the inclusion of protection for specimen trees, which are oak trees greater than 18 inches and have a trunk diameter of 12 inches or more, and there are a number of native trees that are included in that. Those are good work. So there is also a recommendation in there to include a tree board. And so I understand that there are exceptions that are applied to our current regulations, and that Chatham Park is a part of those exceptions. And so I would just say, implement this plan and hold them accountable to the laws and the work that y'all have already done. That's pretty much it. And if there are representatives from Chatham Park here, when you say you're going to do something, you need to do it. Coming back later and saying you're going to do less is shoddy work, and that's just what it is. If you want to join this community and be our neighbors, be good neighbors, do what you're going to say you're going to do, and We remember that. When all of this is said and done, you have a job to sell homes, and we understand that. And the people that are buying those homes are buying their homes because they think they're getting something of value. If you're selling them shoddy work, they're going to see that too. Thank you.
Thank you, Calvin. Calvin Megginson is the son of Kate Megginson, for many years the Chatham County Planning Director. Jan Berger, you're next on the public expression list.
Thanks for giving me a chance to speak. I'm Jan Berger. I live over in Bynum on 726 Bynum Road. And I sent you guys all a letter last week. I hope you got a chance to read it, but I thought I would just read it tonight and give a couple more comments, if that's okay. Dear Commissioners and Mayor, I'm writing to express my concern for the unacceptable 10% tree coverage plan for Chatham Park. Creating a concrete urban zone along the Hall River would be devastating for the health of the river. I believe you should hold Chatham Park to the standards set by the town of Pittsboro and maintain a 50% tree cover within the development. Chatham Park has been promised to be an exemplary development. So much of what is being planned for seems like the opposite of that. I want you to stick up for us, the residents of Chatham County. I want you to make Chatham Park as good as it can be. Pittsboro made a commitment in 2010 to protect the Hall River and our drinking water. I want you to honor that commitment. Beyond the issue of tree coverage, there are many things that need to be done to protect the county and its land. Chatham Park needs lower density along the Hall River. Streams and wetlands need larger buffers. Pesticides and fertilizer needs to be kept out of the stream buffers. The stormwater point system, it sounds like me like it treats every area like a plot on a map with no consideration of important groves of trees or sensitive areas. Doesn't sound like a good system. My family and I have been residents of Chatham County for the past 20 years, and we love it here. We wish you would consider our well-being and that of all the other current residents over the in the county over the desire for more revenue from Chatham Park developers. And for the future residents, I want to add, this wasn't in the letter, but I think that having a forest will improve their quality of life and increase the value of their property as well. And it sounds like the new plan is going to make Chatham Park the least forested of all cities in North Carolina, or one of the least, depending on how it ends up being. I know it's fluctuating between 3 and 25% now, but in different areas. But I remember when they advertised Chatham Park, they had a video flying over the Hall River and saying, "Look at this pristine area. This is going to be the most beautiful development ever." And I just don't understand how that's the case if they're going to cut down all of the trees and they're going to endanger the river that they're flying over and saying it's going to be a beautiful new version of Silicon Valley. The trees are the health of the area that we live in. They're the value. They add value to any property that's there. The trees are the protection of the area that we're in. They protect us from floods. They absorb water when there's excess flooding. All of those things are benefits that they can give. And the idea of having 10% just seems like a really terrible idea. So I really want you to enforce that they do better than that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm sorry I mispronounced your name.
Oh, it's okay.
Kim Calhoun.
Hi, dear commissioners and mayor and fellow Pittsboro and Chatham neighbors. I'm Kim. And when my dad was in middle school, My granddaddy, D.A. Calhoun, moved the family from Rocky Mount here to Chatham to become the minister of Mount Gilead Baptist Church. And my granddad grew up with his friends hunting and fishing and camping all along the Hall River from Bynum down to 64. And I grew up hearing those stories, and then I got to join my grandparents and my dad in the woods and got to learn more about the trees and what their beneficial uses were growing up on the farm. And now it's my occupation and passion to reconnect folks to the trees and learn how to identify them, and in particular, like what their edible and medicinal properties are, like this pine needle tea or pine top tea, like some people call it. Has anybody ever had pine top tea? Maybe a few people. I see a few hands. Okay. I'll give you a sip later if you want. It's real good for the immune system. So on the land now owned by Chatham Park, there are big old trees and beautiful mature woods that mean the world to me. They've been there for me during hard times and given me lots of comfort. And in particular, there's a tulip poplar that would probably take like 3 people to wrap their arms around. And I consider it to be like family. I know that might be a stretch for some y'all, but like that's how it feels. And if that tree and those woods were cut down, it would just thinking about it causes me a lot of pain. And so on a personal level, that 10% tree protection is just unacceptable. And on a collective level, I understand how vital, essential these trees and this current mature forest that we're blessed to have are to our health and to our future. We need it for our air. Like, we're breathing right now. Hallelujah. We're alive and breathing. We don't think about it, but all of our breaths are dependent on the trees, y'all. Okay? I'm going to take a breath right now and hope I don't run out 3 minutes. Also for our water quality. As my friend Jan was talking about, like when we have rains, and it seems like now more than ever, we get a good rain, and like there's roads that I'm used to traveling on in Chatham County that are flooded, and I can't get through, right? And with the increase of these of the severe weather from climate change, that's just going to increase. And so I really want to stress that 2-inch saplings, which is also included in like counting towards that 10% tree coverage, in my understanding of the current proposal, those are not going to stop floods. Those aren't going to give us shade or a whole lot of oxygen. You might get some pine needles off a few of them and make some tea, but it's not the same as mature woods that take like decades, if not a century, to grow back, and some of the places we're blessed to have these old woods. And so if Chatham Park really wants to be the best master plan community yet developed, as they say on the website, they need to walk their talk, and we need you to help hold them accountable. 10%, even 20% tree coverage is totally unacceptable for the largest remaining intact forest in the Triangle region, which these over 7,000 acres are. If Chatham Park would choose to be a responsible environmental steward, they would actually make more money. We'd all be better off. People want these forests. It is attractive to live near, to hike near. They want the trails. It is already a destination, this unique recreational area. It could become more so to contribute to our economy. And so I just really want to ask you to spend some time on the land. I don't know if you've been blessed to live or recreate or visit any of the tracts of forests that are under consideration for development. I would like to extend an invitation to any of you to go on a walk with me to get to meet some of these really big and important trees and know more about their food and medicine and the other ways that they nourish us and our well-being. I'll send you an email, and like maybe we can coordinate something. And I would extend that also to Chatham Park developers, because I feel like if you really knew the area and had a deep connection, it would deeply impact the choices you're making, and it would not be acceptable to have this 10 or 20% tree protection. Yes. So thank you.
Thank you, Kim Calhoun. I was really hoping that the person who wrote the poem that was sent to us about the trees, who was that? Do you know? It was a very...
It was Joy Hewitt, probably.
Oh, was it? Okay. It was an absolutely charming poem in which each one of our names were turned into an aspect of conservation of trees. It was very, very clever. Anyway, all right, thank you. Our time for citizens' input has ended, and commissioner and manager updates. I've only attended 2 meetings this past time since the last meeting. On the 15th of January, I was interviewed by WCHL in what they are doing as the Chatham Roundup, and they're going to be, Aaron Hill was the young man who interviewed me on WCHL, and he's going to be inviting us back from time to time to fill in what's happening in Chatham, because of course they already cover what is happening in Chapel Hill, Carrboro. And then on the 19th, Helen Baldwin and I attended the MLK breakfast at in Siler City for the NAACP event that is annually held there. I would like to call to people's attention that Duke Energy has let me know that the coal ash issue will be addressed by them at a meeting on January 31st from 6 to 7:30 at the new Ag Building. And I don't know who else will be represented there as far as, but I think it's an informational sort of meeting that's being done by Duke. Are there updates from the commissioners other than on the other issues such as the PBA downtown Main Street?
Yep. I can mention that the EDC is having their retreat this Thursday, January 31st from 8 to 1. I'm going to attend as much as I can. Main Street, I am happy to report that the art that we are considering for the handrail downtown is coming along very, very handsomely. And Beth Olson, Eddie White, and Justin Green are all involved, and I'm really excited to display these handrails when they're done.
And I attended a Chatham Arts Council meeting and had a great meeting. I do want to mention that there's going to be a gallery show by Dory Casey, who's a Chatham County artist. She's completed a really nice body of work that's going to be for sale on February 9th at the Chatham Arts Council building from 1 to 4, February 9th. And 100% of the proceeds will go to benefit programs of the Arts Council. A lot of that includes programs in all 10 schools in the county. So the Arts Council is really focused on supporting artists and supporting children in the schools. So I'm very pleased that it's very generous for Dory Casey to literally donate this large body of work to benefit local children and local artists. So that again, that's February 9th, 1 to 4 at the Chatham Arts Council building on 118 West Street.
And you have a meeting to report? Brian Griesbeck has our manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor Perry. Those were very good updates. My compliments to the board on that information. I mentioned a couple of things tonight. I attended a meeting with DOT 2 weeks ago regarding the plans for the traffic circle, the downtown traffic circle improvements. There's some work initially regarding utility burial that is scheduled to begin in the next couple of months and be complete in September. And that is those are the utilities that are south of the traffic circle. I think are do impact another possible project in that southwest corner, which the board is familiar with. There's the presentation. We will let you know if any of that changes. That's the information that we have. Right now, a lot of this work is being coordinated with Duke, and so Duke Energy, of course, has their schedules to contend with. So again, we'll do our best to keep you posted on that. Construction itself, bid letting, all of that is waiting for the utility burial to commence and be completed. Bid letting would be fall of 2019, construction beginning in early 2020, and then project being complete in October of 2020. Miscellaneous comments that I'll also include is that public meetings will be scheduled by DOT and Kinley warned in advance of construction. My understanding is this project funding is guaranteed with no match required from the town. We do have, however, an opportunity to upsize the segment of 2-inch water line still in the circle that we were contending with during the Hillsborough Street water main transmission project 5 years ago, 6 years ago now. And so the opportunity for the town to contribute to that is what they call a betterment, but probably more to come on that as we get forward. I think Commissioner Kyoko also managed to attend that meeting, and I think like I said, my impression of the meeting, absent some of these comments, is just basically a technical review of the plan, sort of a review of and comments of the plans, and so there's more work coming and more information disseminated as this moves forward.
I think you did the salient points.
Thanks. In other DOT news, the statewide transportation improvement program, you may hear it referred to as STIP, Prioritization 5.0, which covers years 2020 through 2029. The draft has been released, and there are 3 projects that affect us here locally that are more or less intended to help with downtown congestion and truck traffic, and also serve anticipated development on the east side of town with the Chatham Parkway construction. Chatham Parkway North in the draft STIP is slated to begin right away, beginning in 2021 with construction in 2022. And as you'll recall, that's the area that's roughly between 64 bypass heading north to most of the way to 15501, or partially, or all the way to 15501. And so I would have to double check on that, but that is slated for, that at least is prioritized in this draft for construction at that point. Chatham Parkway South, which would be south of Business 64, heading all the way down to Sanford Road or South 15501. Right-of-way work on that would begin in 2023 with construction in 2025. And then a project that the town has been interested in for quite some time would be the modernization of NC 87 west of town, and that's coming in, or that's scoring in with right-of-way construction in 2027 and construction in 2029. So these projects, again, have been identified in the draft. I believe there's a public comment period this spring, and if all goes well according to MDOT or NCDOT, then they would be looking at final adoption of STIP this summer, and so we'll have more firm information at that point.
I noticed they were surveying in the circle today about it.
Yeah, I saw that. There's been some, I guess, as long as just one more comment about DOT before I move on. There's been some work that's been occurring on Hillsborough Street, 15501, north of the downtown. Apparently that's, again, sometimes they show up and they just kind of do this work without really notifying us, and they tend to hold up traffic a little bit. But it seems like it's a lot of traffic management for what amounts to, my naked eye, work along the shoulders, gravel work along the shoulders of the road, and I believe they're doing some storm drain work along the side there as well. So they're being safe. I mean, I'll hand it to them now. But I will let you know if that's going to be a long-term issue. But that's been, as you can probably tell, it's been going on for the last couple of days. More locally, park design RFQs were released. You recall from our budget that we did have some planning budgeted for future parks and rectory. The first parker up the top would be some property that you'll recall that the town received a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago now, and it's much less than an acre, and so we don't really have a vision for that. That's what essentially this park design RFQ would help determine would be a vision for that property. And that RFQ is due on February 18th. We'll be looking at selecting a consultant by early March. Same issue, Kiwanis Park. You'll recall, you can see the drawing here. This would be what they call the Kiwanis barn. They are interested in using this area to the rear of the barn as park property to complement the existing park that's up here in this southwest corner of the Kiwanis property. And so I think the idea there, Mr. Paul Horton does have a couple of comments on that he shared with me, and that some concepts anyway. I mean, it's just conceptual that this, first of all, the existing park would be rehabbed, and then the park to the west of the Kiwanis barn would have an older focus and possibly a focus on children and young adults with autistic tendencies. So, but anyway, some of that will be fleshed out in this design process. This process is for design work, and it's not. We do not, as you're probably aware, do not have money allocated for these projects yet. That would be something that we would be tackling in the CIP probably as soon as this year. So at least determine some possible funding sources for that. So more to come on that. Just a couple other miscellaneous comments. Pittsburgh Elementary School Road, Bridge, and Culvert reconstruction. It was called the last meeting. We selected Weatherall Engineering to begin work. Recently, it's my understanding they've been in contact with residents or attempting to contact residents. They'll have some personnel on site within the next few days to begin to help with their pre-design work. And as you recall, that's work that would a couple parts to that. There would be a larger culvert structure that you elected to go with that would be able to handle more intense event storm occurrences, and then we're also looking at, I believe, some shore or bank work as well. Staff board retreat, like the schedule, we nailed down some time frames. We'd like to try to hone it down a little bit more. We'd like to try to schedule the retreat either the week of February 18th or the week of February 25th. If you can check your calendars, and I'll follow up with you on that. As we discussed, most or all the day, at least that first day, would be spent with staff, and then we would look at structuring an additional session, if you so choose, future goals and outcomes. But that's the general time frame I'm working with. You guys can let me know if some dates in there, and then we'll circle back and schedule specific dates. That's the general 2-week time frame that we have with staff that seems to be working pretty good. We narrowed out a date from there. UDO, Unified Development Ordinance, we're in the process of winding things down with Clarion. Mr. Jones, planner, has indicated that Clarion's done just about everything they can do for us at this point. So we are adequately ending that relationship. They will or can be available for any additional work, presentations if necessary, and we'll be looking forward to finalizing that. other meetings and events, Opportunity Chatham, I think you may have received an email on that from the EDC. The Chatham EDC is scheduled for Friday, February 22nd, 8 to 10 at the New Ag Center. Let me know if you're interested in attending. What I can do, as I've done for other events, other similar events, is just purchase a table, and then you can let me know if you'd like to attend. I can certainly go that route as well. Maybe the easiest thing to do on that.
Let me down.
Excellent. It's been a good event the last couple of years. Sooner than that are coming up. We have a county legislative breakfast on February 8th at the New Ag Center, 8:30 a.m. I'll get with the mayor on that. Then finally, as far as I can tell, my only other comment would be I'm planning on attending the Managers Mayor Conference February 6th, 7th, and 8th in Winston-Salem. February 6th, 7th, and 8th in Winston-Salem. That's critical for my public development or my professional development. It also allows me to kind of contact and share experiences with other managers. I attended the event in Winston-Salem last year. Previously, it had been held in Durham, which was always easier for me to attend, but I'd only attend part of it. Having it in Winston-Salem kind of forces me into being there for the duration. So I guess Winston-Salem is nice this time of year, so I look forward to it. Nice anytime. With that, I will tap out. Please let me know now or later in the meeting if you have any comments, questions, or comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Under old business, our first item is the preliminary subdivision plat review for Chatham Park Section 1.5.1. Victoria Bale will lead us in this.
Thank you, Mayor. This is subdivision 2018-02. Chatham Park Investors has submitted a preliminary plat for review. The property is zoned PDD and is located north of Thompson Street and east of Pittsburgh Fire Tower Road. The proposal is to subdivide approximately 40 acres into 180 lots with an average lot size of 4,644 square feet. This subdivision will include detached single-family residences as well as 64 townhomes located in the northwest corner. On October 8, 2018, the Board of Commissioners granted a sewer allocation of 79,800 gallons per day to Section 5.1 Subdivision North. The request from the applicant tonight is that the 79,800 gallons per day be able to be used for either Subdivision North or Subdivision West. A public hearing for the perimeter boundary transition was held on October 22nd, 2018. No citizens chose to speak at this hearing. This subdivision plat was reviewed by the Planning Board at their meeting on December 3rd, and in a vote of 6-0, the Board recommended approval of the plat. These plans have been reviewed in accordance with the town's applicable development ordinances by the appropriate departments, and staff is also recommending approval of the preliminary plat.
Thank you. Other questions from the board?
Only one. I like the fact that it's got a lot of greenway involved, sidewalks, multi-use paths. I think it's meeting all the criteria that we set out. And I noticed that a portion, one segment of the greenway is actually on the backside slope of the dam or stormwater device, which is probably going to be a 3-to-1 slope. So not going to be very accessible. And it just looked like an odd arrangement, and if we could flatten that out, that would be great.
Thank you, Mr. Patricio. I also have a question regarding greenways. I don't know that we actually have any policy about this, but to the extent that Chatham Park investors are intending to invest so significantly in greenways, I have concerns about the extent to which those greenways are planned for other property owners for their land. Do we have policies in this regard?
Are you referring to, I believe, the exhibit last meeting about going over the Schweinkel property? That's just a plan for the future in case that property ever becomes available. It's not written in stone. A lot of the plans that they provided to us have been changed from what they originally thought that they were going to do on their own property. So it's just a plan for the future. They can't take over the Schwenkel's property unless the Schwenkels sell it to them.
Right. But the placement of those greenways is something that I think we need to pin down and it's called for in site plans, subdivision plans.
They will be pinned down. This one's pinned down right now. They extend greenways just like they extend roads to future developments. Wendover and Vine, I believe, maybe Wendover, it ends at another person's property. That doesn't mean a road is going into their property.
But with regard to roads, actually, we do have some elements in our own UDOs, I recall, that do require stub-outs to that imposes on plans for adjacent property owners. There are requirements for those stub-outs to be picked up and contiguous, I think. I don't think we have that requirement for greenways. Is that correct? I don't want to put you on the spot, but it's an open question, I think.
I don't know about that. I can't speak to that at this moment.
Okay.
John, I think you make a good point. To develop a network, whether it be sidewalks, roads, greenways, that kind of consideration should be given, and those stubs should be made. Agreed.
Or if we're not going to encumber adjacent property owners with that requirement, then those greenways should be planned without assuming that continuity. I think it's a big assumption that the Schwenkels should pick up that greenway.
Oh, I'm not talking about any specific project. But in general, if we're going to create a network, it needs to have the ability to be created. And that means on a particular development that you stub to that property line. If the next development comes along and picks it up, great. If they don't, then there's no harm to that property.
Except the greenways that are being proposed, there's lots of requirements that Chatham Park is writing themselves for the cumulative length of greenways. I think there's even some calculations that have to do with the width of the greenways. So, yeah, it's a concern.
Well, I think those calculations would be specific to within their property.
What's on their property. I think that opens up some problems when it stubs out and then picks up somewhere else, because if the greenway isn't continued across that adjacent property owner's land, then it's not a functional greenway. Right. So how would it count as greenway if it's not functional? If you can't get from A to B? It's a concern.
separating A and B. Greenway, going from A to B, whether that's 1,000 feet or 10,000 feet, is still a greenway.
One step you might say that encourage trespassing upon somebody else's property. In this case, the Schwann's property, which could be problematic.
So I have another question about, I'll just pose this to John Park Investors. Chuck, maybe this is best for you if you can help me understand. Are there, I've tried to digest these plans, and with the wet ponds and other storm control measures, are there trees that are specimens in the survey that are incorporated in those wet ponds, or that will be cost to be removed?
You should probably let the designers answer that, but
Okay.
it depends on the stormwater device.
Okay, so it depends on the particular circumstance.
But they can speak to it.
Robbie, could I trouble you to
Sure.
help me understand that better?
Robbie Odom, Withers Avenue, good evening. On behalf of Chatham Park Investors, and we've got our team here, so Kurt may be able to describe a little bit better, but what we did early on, this was again probably a year ago, is identify some areas where there are some specimen champion trees that were actually, just to give you a little history, our first layout we did on this, it was kind of like the previous plan that we did on Thompson Street subdivision, where we came back and revised some lots, revised some roads. We did the same thing on this. We walked this site, it's probably been 2 years ago, and identified some specimen champion trees and some other areas of interest, and we have gone back and revised that. We created, and Kurt will probably talk this better, but if you look at lots, let's point to this area right here. This is a champion specimen tree here, and this whole layout was redesigned just to create that as a focal point of open space area. So we have taken those areas into consideration and doing that layout, and even this area, same thing back here, and doing this whole corridor back here where the greenway is currently.
Okay. Is that the only instance that you would highlight?
Kurt, as far as the other rock out properties and
Yeah, there are some rock outcroppings that are located on, if you look at plan sheet 3.2, that we designed the greenway to kind of go around. The two trees that we identified were trees that, as Robbie said, were champion in nature, 36-inch trees.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
3.2.
Sheet 3.2, right pretty much in the middle of the page. That there was a couple significant rock outcrop features that we are proposing the greenway to be routed in between those. With the other 36-inch trees that are identified on the plan, those were the significant features that we have shown on the plan, and like as Robbie said, we designed around those.
So these comments are helpful, but in contrast to, I think it was a subdivision plan that we saw for Mosaic 2.0, the area south of the high school. we've had much greater, granted, different set of principles, but Chuck, you'll have cognizance of this. We had much greater insight into where those specimen trees were, and they were individually marked on the tree coverage plan. Can we have that?
I think, well, again, I'm not really the one you should be asking this. In the 92 acres, I believe there were some groupings of trees where there were specimens located. There haven't been subdivision plans or anything submitted on those, so I don't know what the status of that is. On these, I know I've been on a few walks. We specifically located trees. I know a number of those have been included in the subdivision plans that you previously approved, as well as this that showed where specific trees were that we were trying to save, and as well as rock outcroppings that Kurt talked about. And we have changed designs to take advantage of those.
I appreciate that.
I'm not quite sure if I'm answering your question, but
I think what I'm saying is that what I'm hearing, I'm not seeing represented, and so it'd be really nice to hear as your intentions change that those are represented in these subdivision plans, especially with regard to specimen trees.
I will also add that, we're just not going out and looking at sizes of trees. We're also analyzing their health, forms, things that are around them. There could be a 40-inch tree out there that's completely hollow and has, dead branches. We're not going to mark that and show that on the plan to be safe. It's more of a hazard tree. Are you looking at the open space plan when you're asking about the trees not being shown?
Looking at page 2.0, the tree coverage area plan. I think that on the tree coverage area plan for the area south of the high school that I remember seeing individual specimens marked in addition to TCAs. And I admire what you're telling me about how for example, Greenway has changed. And I think it would be very helpful for you to show that hard work with this document for those that you're intending to protect.
Parking townhomes? Is that on-street parking, or is it parking that's going to be, I'm looking 3.0. Is that parking that's going to be in front of the townhomes? Or tell me about the parking.
So for the townhomes, they each have a one-car garage for the parking element, and pretty much a one-car driveway minimum. So for the element, each townhome will require 2 off-street spaces, which the garage and the driveway count for that. What we have done is locate a couple of satellite lots in some open space areas, and also shown a few dedicated on-street spaces at the southern end of the townhomes where the entrance is to the greenway. That's the location we picked for the mail kiosk, and there's some more guest parking there. So overall, in the townhome area, those up and upwards of almost 20, I'd say 24 to 20 spaces for guest parking.
So the townhomes, do they have some yard, no yard, or is it the yard in the back, or in front? How many spaces is that?
There's some line work that's in there, and there's a circle with a lot number. The box that circles in is a typical footprint of where the actual unit will be. The units are going to vary size and or as far as depth goes, depending on elevation that's chosen by the homeowner. But the space between the back wall of the unit and you can see a lot line, there is a backyard space back there.
So that off parking is usually called just for guests.
We're trying to provide that in addition, even though it's not required, to continue on parking in the street right away.
Other questions?
One other question is swirling, and I need to figure out how to articulate this. What would be the sequencing and timing for interconnection of the major thoroughfares here?
Which one in particular? There's Wendover.
Wendover connecting to Chatham Parkway and...
Yeah, we would like to have that connected by the end of the year. That's going to be subject to permitting.
Okay.
We are hoping to get Vine Parkway construction plans approved in the next few weeks, hopefully. But we're ready to start construction on that. That material is going to be needed. It's hopefully for the Daly's Academy. Wendover, with that design, the construction plans have been submitted for the second or third review. Again, waiting on construction plan approval for that. And then we'll need the 401 and 404 permitting from the Corps for the stream crossings. As soon as we can get that, we'd like to have that connected to Chatham Parkway. As you know, Chatham Parkway is almost, they have gone through the punch list on that, and they're pretty much steaming straw on it as we speak. So the time will be and as soon as we can get the permitting to do it. So all the construction plans have been submitted and done. We just got to get the final approval and final permits.
Got it. Okay. Robbie, I just wanted to make sure that we're not heading for a similar situation where we may have overheard some of the concerns and hearing about the Owl Place. Yeah. So, I'm sure.
And I would say things are taking a little bit longer with the permitting. So maybe a year ago we would have said, hey, we're going to try to do this before. Now Wendover is actually ahead of, we were hoping to have some of this approved sooner, actual lots. So now the construction plans for the roadways are actually ahead of the lots. So it's almost right opposite, just so you know, because typically you don't want to put in all this infrastructure until we have the lots, but just the way the timing and the permitting has worked, we're going to have infrastructure in, a lot of the major infrastructure in before we even have lots on the ground. So, which is good for us.
Yeah. And I'll just circle back to reiterate, I appreciate the hard work that you've made, the deliberation you're making on specimen trees, and I appreciate you hearing my request that those appear on the subdivision plan. And again, it's because I think there is a very strong sentiment and concern in this community for the protection of our tree cover and individual specimen trees. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Bobby, I think I realized I do have one additional question.
Okay.
Looking at those plans, the way I'm reading them, I think the Edgefield Street connection to Fire Tower Road is part of this subdivision.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Move to approve.
Second. Moved by Michael Bianco, seconded by Brenda Hall. Please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. We amended our agenda to reflect that the demolition of Town Hall would be next on the agenda under old business.
I requested to add this because at the last meeting we approved demolition, and we had several options of levels of demolition, and we chose the base bid, which was the lowest level, $58,000 level, with the interest of understanding at what point during demolition could we request, after determining the condition of the slab and all of that, whether it was going to separate easily from the asbestos or not, could we increase the scope? And Taylor reached out to the contractor and discovered that they needed to lock down their asbestos fees. Okay, and so they could not or would not take the risk of signing a contract for $58,000 and then having us choose to do the slab removal and their cost for disposal increasing. So they've locked down a fee, and if they can sign a contract for the larger amount, then they can secure their cost-effective numbers that would support that bid that they gave us. And in the course of doing the demolition, we would have 2.5 weeks from the start of their demolition to decide to go through with the larger number or not take out the slab and go back to the $58,000. So what we were after at the last meeting was, could we structure it in such a way that we had a choice? And the way to structure it for us to have the choice is to go with the higher number. And that's why I wanted to bring it back up, because I think that's the way we're going to get what we want out of this. Is agreeing to go with the larger scope and reducing the scope as we go through the project, if we so choose.
I agree with that. I also spoke to Taylor, and he felt like that it would be a risk not to do that because they expect the numbers to go up.
Right.
And that we would be much better off locking in both parts of that project and then having the option of not getting a refund on the project.
The other thing that we asked Taylor to do is to get a price from the contractor for roughing up the slab so that we leave it that it's not a slick hazard. And I think they are going to be on site this Thursday to do that. Yeah, the 31st. So I would like to propose that we increase our approval of the demolition contract to alternate G1A, authorize the manager to sign that contract, and that we work with the contractor and Hobbs to make a timely decision as to whether to execute that or follow through with that scope of work or to reduce the scope of work to leave the slab in place and rough it up or not.
I'm in favor of that. And I would lean towards going ahead and getting all the...
I would too. I wouldn't spend money on roughing a slab up that we're going to take up. That's, to me, is a waste of, may not be much money, but it's still a waste of money if you're going to take the slab up, in my opinion.
I would just make one comment. And I think Commissioner Fiocco did describe pretty well what the current situation is. You recall the memo, the memo that Parks has on the screen right now is what Taylor had described to us at the last meeting, and that's essentially the same scenario that he was. That was actually a recommended scenario that he presented. And then the second thing is that we had, as you recall, budgeted approximately $312,000 for the entire demolition. So this is still, even this $178,000 is still well within what we had estimated and budgeted. So we're, I think, pretty comfortable in making this happen as described.
So, Michael, your motion is to authorize the manager to approve the contract under the terms of our G1A proposal from the last meeting.
And to explore the options of the additional cost for roughing the slab and or presenting a decision to the board on whether to remove the slab or not within the time frame stipulated by the contractor so as not to incur a cost increase.
All right, you've heard the motion. Did you second?
Second.
Motion made by Michael Fiocco, seconded by Beth Wilson Foley. Those in favor, please indicate. I'm sorry. Further discussion?
So long as, I appreciate the slight modification, Commissioner Goodrow, to your motion, as long as we don't see an additional cost increase for the special treatment of the slab to make it less slippery, I can support that.
Well, I think that what we will do is we'll get a price for that and make a decision on it. Sounds like your decision is made.
No, I'm not saying that, but I think that what we heard previously was the suggestion that if we chose to leave the slab in place, we might have a second set of hazardous remediation type expenditures, because if they're going to take one bite of the apple and it has to do with asbestos, they're going to have to come back and do asbestos again.
Right.
So I don't see the benefit to having the slab stay in place if Taylor Hobbs has already designed a gravel parking area that will suffice.
As I stated last time, part of my concern is how long will this be in that state? How will it look in downtown Pittsboro? And not only how will it look in place, but how will it look in rain events? Because the type of material that will go down will have to have lots of fines in it so it compacts solidly. And those fines will migrate, and I'm concerned of the look of the parking lot as that material moves across the parking lot, down the asphalt slope, and actually into the roadway. That's part of my concern in trying to analyze the situation and make the best decision. So knowing what an option is to leave it in place and rough it so it's not an unsafe condition is something I'd like to know to make an informed decision.
Okay. Since we're all wanting this to proceed as quickly as possible, can we find a way to delegate that decision to our manager?
I think we just did.
With your motion?
Yeah.
Okay. Even the question of whether or not to go with the extension of the slab and scarification.
Yeah, I think it'd be good to know what those options are and
to bring them back to the board.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I understand that this motion would allow us to proceed with that, with alternative G1A. We would get the project started. We would come back to the board. There were more cost considerations associated with roughing up the slab.
Roughing up the slab and/or making a decision as to whether or not to reduce the contract to the 58.
Okay. Good.
I have one question regarding the G1A versus the G1B. Now, you're looking at, there is still a possibility that these slabs could go out at the separated price, correct?
That's right. Okay. That's right. And in fact, I think Taylor mentioned the last time I was here, they've done some pre-work on that idea and felt as though it was coming apart easily.
So that would be better to our advantage, is that possible?
Yes.
Any further discussion? You've heard the motion made by Michael Fiocco, seconded by Bette Wilson Foley, to authorize the manager to follow G1A, bring back to the board the exploration of alternatives regarding roughing the slab and any cost increase as a result. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Motion carries unanimously. We have brought forward from the agenda, the consent agenda, item number 4 into new business.
I wanted to bring this out of the consent agenda to consult with Mr. Messick on the idea that this master and coaching agreement is going to allow for private maintenance of certain facilities within the public right-of-way. And the question is, should that entity, which in the contract is referred to as the responsible party, should they fail to do proper maintenance And for health and safety issues, the town feels it important to spend its funds on maintaining and safing up the situation that should there be a mechanism in this agreement that allows the town to recoup those costs that would otherwise be borne by the responsible party. So I think it would be a prudent thing to have in the agreement, master agreement. I wanted to get Mr. Messick's thoughts on that.
Sure. I mean, I think it all depends on what improvement you're talking about. And it could be done either in the general or in the master agreement or in the specific agreements, depending on what those particular improvements are. I'm not sure the artwork is the same category as a stop sign. So, but sure. I mean, I don't see any problem with that, and I don't know.
Well, then I would like to ask Mr. Messick to do that.
To add a guarantee or a reimbursement by the responsible party to the town in the event that the town comes forward with some kind of maintenance of those facilities. Michael Fiocco has made that motion. Second by John Bonnet. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries unanimously. You'll note that in your agenda package, we had a Department of Insurance inspection letter and tree protection ordinance recommendations, and so we note those, but I think we're down to Commissioner Fitzgerald. Jay Farrell?
Just one thing is that the UDO, I don't want us to let that out on the side. I'd like to really get into that, maybe a work session and get this moving forward. We have, we've got to, before we lose our sight of it all, believe me.
I agree.
And, for myself, first I wonder if we could have some plans that's the size of Robbie Oldham's back there, because I don't have a table in my kitchen that's big enough to spread all this out. So I'd personally like to have some small sets of plants. Maybe a magnifying glass to go with it, but that's all I got.
That wasn't covered?
Commissioner Fiocco's already brought up the thing that I was going to talk about, speaking of tables.
I will continue to request the large plans that are to scale that I can read on my kitchen table. And I'm concerned that this meeting is not going long. Good joke. All right.
Emma Baldwin. Yes, I do. I have a request for citizens over on East Cornwallis. They want someone to look at the streets over there because a lot of them, they indicate need repaving. Also, they would like some caution signs that say slow children at play. There's speeding going on there. So if someone could look at that, that would be great. Thank you.
John Bonnet?
Mr. Grusbeck, I'm curious if, although it's been resolved, the federal matter, the shutdown, those things are happening with greater frequency, and I'm wondering if you have formally or informally polled your staff about possible impacts on our operations, or are you aware of anything off the top of your head?
Not yet at our level, at the local level. I think counties are a bit more susceptible to shutdowns than smaller municipal governments now. Having said that, it was one of our concerns as we worked forward on FEMA reimbursement for costs associated with Florence and Michael. But even in those cases, and I'm not making a comment one way or another, at least in this case, as far as FEMA goes, they've scheduled a meeting, I believe, for tomorrow.
Great.
on the process of reimbursement, and I expect that meeting to continue. So
Wonderful.
Good shape at the moment.
Thank you.
That's
Man, I have just one other thing regarding that East Cornwallis. I've had several emails still regarding that area that's not paved. I think there's been some new houses put in down at the other end, and I mean, you know, I can understand their problem. The road is in bad shape now from all the construction vehicles and all. So if there's any way we can reach back out to DOT.
The issue there is that DOT would be willing to cede that road to our control, and that would allow us to pave it at a standard that's probably more timely than what DOT's looked at in the past. They ran into some design issues with width and what have you. We probably, if we had it locally, I say this without discussing this component of it, because we're not that far along in that process, should we come to it, but we could probably design and build it faster than what DOT could, because we're not bound to the same regulations they have. Having said that, that area does go through some property that is not currently within the town limits. So the board would have to also be okay with that. In other words, paving a street that goes in front of property that's not in town. So that would be a decision that you guys would have to make, and it departs a little bit from what staff typically recommend. If you guys want to do that, we can do it. But those would be the two biggest challenges.
Would Powellville money take care of that?
If we had the road, yeah.
I'm not sure you can spend any public money on property for a street outside of the town limits.
Could we have a determination on that? Because I think that has been a real recurring issue. So maybe we could add that to the agenda next week.
So we're talking about a formal presentation on the concept of annexing that right away,
or paving without annexing. Didn't we
You don't have an easement in the first place, and the second place it's out of town. So you really can't pave private property anywhere without an easement. And I don't think you can pave private property with an easement outside of town.
One of the questions was, did the citizens not place some objections to being taken out of that?
It's a deal.
Okay.
We can talk about it.
Yeah, how about the next meeting, we just have a presentation of exactly what would be needed to take ownership, possession of the right-of-way, street, acquire the right-of-way, do the work, pave it, what's it going to cost approximately, ballpark. Giving a good public hearing of that will help us address the concerns of those neighbors. We can also then contemplate taking action.
I'd like to add to the paving list that Chatham Street is in terrible condition right near the concrete plant, and probably because of the truck traffic there. But there's some really severe holes in that. And I also wondered what was going on at Creedle and Midway. There's some really intensive utility work. Anything vital that we need to know?
Which one do you want to address first? The Chatham Street issue there, we've talked about briefly in other meetings. The issue there is that it kind of bottoms out before it goes up to so there's some storm drain issues there that would have to be. I mean, we'd be looking at probably another Pittsburgh Elementary School road decision as to whether or not we would want to fix the culvert that's under there that causes a washout. That partially, it's not just the trucks; it's some of that is that gully there is where it washes out. and it doesn't take much to wash out. So that's something, sure, that we could consider doing, but, you know, it'd be another one of those decisions. Do we want to just pave what's there, or do we want to fix a big one? And then Creedle, you said the other situation was?
Utility work, do you have Creedle?
Creedle on the side?
At Midway.
Oh, Creedle and Midway? I don't.
They were actually putting in natural gas. There's two houses down at the bottom of Cedar Lane down there that I talked to you about. Down in that floodplain down. I thought it was a floodplain.
Okay.
But evidently it's not. But they were putting in natural gas.
Non-official floodplain, it just acts like one?
Yeah.
Okay.
It just floods.
Right.
It's natural gas.
Anything further? Thank you. And would there be a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Those in favor, indicate by standing. This is one of our
Hey, Lou. All you got?
I will.
I did.